Welcome to another episode of Roll or Die. Today we have for you AET and Renegade Black Belt Mick Pope. Mick if you're in Melbourne, he is definitely an OG black belt who's been around for many, many years. So looking forward to chatting with him about his life on and off the mats. Welcome, Mick.
Oh, he's frozen at exactly the right time. Like
Here I was saying that we've never had a problem before, and either that or he is very still and just entranced with what we're talking about here.
Breathing technique.
That's all good. This could be a little editing project for Theo if the time comes to it.
But it depends on how. If we can keep talking and it's really funny,
we could just see how that goes.
So Mick.
Oh wait, now we go. Here we go.
Hey, welcome back.
My flaky internet. Sorry.
Oh, good. All good. We have had other guests with internet issues, so we've managed to get around it. So, as I said, we can either get our editor to edit that bit out, or we can just leave it in for continuity. So, yeah, as I was saying, welcome, Mick.
Thank you.
How have you been? We haven't seen you since I guess I haven't seen you in person since before the lockdowns and etc. How have you been keeping?
Mental well-being. It's just sucked. So looking forward to heading back shortly.
Yeah. Yes. You haven't even had a haircut in ages, man. So
no, I know, right? I'm normally number one because my hair's falling out. So my just as I was explaining before we started, my son's doing VCE exams, so just being ultra cautious with the Rona. You know, the word I don't really want us to use too much because we're all sick of it. But come next Tuesday, number one, and off on the mats and just roll.
That's good, man. What's your game style like? Because we've actually never met before today, but how would you describe like your jiu-jitsu as such?
Oh, giving away secrets.
Yeah, how do I beat you? Like just.
I'm sure they're not secrets, Mick. How long have you been doing jiu-jitsu? I'm sure people have seen.
Look,
your game.
Top game. I've got a judo background, but I've also got two buggered knees. Jamie Murray, who runs Renegade's always been big on, look, pull guard because you won't hurt yourself and you won't hurt the other person. But at heart, I love takedowns. I want to be on top. I want to be smashing past the guard and using the old man strength and leverage to squash the hell out of someone until they give up a limb. Yeah. Once you post 50, it's the way you survive rolling the younger people. I mean, I love my guard, I love my ex guard and OG close guard and whatnot, but that gets tiring as hell. So being on top and squashing is probably my favorite position.
Mine too, bro.
Tell us how you found jiu-jitsu, how
I got into it.
Came to be, yeah.
Yeah, so try not to give you every detail, but I was your typical, you hear the stories about O Sensei, the founder of Aikido, and a lot of famous martial artists, they were weedy kids, right? And they got into martial arts because they wanted to be strong, they wanted respect, they wanted to be able to defend themselves, that sort of stuff. So I started judo and karate when I was 16. So I've been a martial artist most of my adult life, and in and out of that because of study and work and whatnot. And I was, when I got married, my wife was doing Hapkido, which is kind of it's a cover everything martial art with bits from judo and taekwondo and you name it, they've pinched it. So we did a bit of grappling, a little bit of ground fighting in its amateurish way. And I started researching on pre-World Wide Web. It was called Usenet, online bulletin boards and talking to Americans. And they were talking about submission wrestling, submission grappling, and so on. I thought, that's something I have to add to the game because Hapkido tries to be this all-encompassing martial art. Then I moved to Melbourne and walked into one of those, bargain bookstores one day, and they had UFC VHS tapes. So this is how long ago this is over 20 years now. And I took them home and watched them and went, oh shit, I have to do that. So it's a bit of a cliche, but Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee got me into martial arts, but Hoist Gracie has kept me there. Rang around a few places, got in touch with John Will, and ended up at Hangar 4, which was at Essendon Airport for many, many years, and the rest is history. So just always loved martial arts, moved from obsessing about self-defense and could I beat up that person, you go into a pub and you're looking around to just, this is my social life, this is about my well-being and expressing who I am as a person. So yeah, that's the short version.
That's amazing, man.
You said you moved to Melbourne. So where was that from? Where were you?
Okay, so I born in Sydney, lived in Brisbane for a bit, moved to Melbourne, moved to country Victoria for a long time, came down Melbourne for uni, went up to Sydney for uni, came back to Melbourne, went up to Sydney. So I've kind of been around places. Started Hapkido in Sydney, did judo and karate in country Victoria. Like I've tried a dozen or more different martial arts over the years. Hapkido, judo, I've tried ninjutsu, taekwondo, tai chi. You grab hold of what you can and try and get out of it what you can. But of all the martial arts I've done, I think I've become the most obsessive about jiu-jitsu because of the endless possibilities. And it's you can do kata only so many times and it gets a bit stale, but I've never actually been bored at jiu-jitsu ever. So
Your wife get bitten by the jiu-jitsu bug as well and come across it from Hapkido to BJJ?
Yeah, look, I mean, I moved and they didn't have Hapkido here, and I was actually doing karate at the time as well, and I made the choice to give that away for good or for ill because we were doing Muay Thai as well at Hangar 4, and I kept getting punched in the face because the karate hands, the stance down here, Muay Thai up around your head sort of thing. So I guess like evolution, I evolved towards focusing mostly on jiu-jitsu, and I used to play a lot of hooks guard, and I got a bit fed up with shin kick sparring in Muay Thai and then going on to doing jiu-jitsu class. So it just kind of honed down until I'm just predominantly a grappler now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome.
You're up.
Your turn, Anton.
Oh, no.
Go. We take it in turn to ask the questions, Mick, so that's how we split them up.
Professional. No, it's actually your question though, Kim. But I actually.
Okay.
Yeah, you go.
Yeah, go. So you were talking about uni. Like, what is it that you've studied at uni, Mick?
Okay, I did an honours degree in maths many years ago, and then I went on and enrolled in and as in life, also in jiu-jitsu, I went and enrolled in a PhD in theoretical astrophysics, which might sound impressive, but believe me, it wasn't. And 3 years later, I ended up with a master's degree instead. Then I worked for the uni for a little while and then joined the Weather Bureau. So I was a weather forecaster for a while. Yeah, insert all the jokes about how often we get it wrong. And then I joined the training section where I've been for the past 20 years and did a PhD in that. And what I take from that, which I think jiu-jitsu models perfectly, is that you have a vision of where you're going to go in life. And like I wanted to be a scientist from age 5, which is now is very nerdy. And as you probably know, jiu-jitsu is actually full of nerds. It's not all about meatheads anymore like it was not even when I started, but the generation before, it was survival of the fittest and the biggest and all the rest of it. And now you've got 5'6" IT geeks who weigh 50 kilos dripping wet, right? Yeah. But my plan to progress in my professional world ended up being a very non-linear path through life. And so is jiu-jitsu. Your progress is the same. You think, yeah, I'll be a black belt in many years and this will happen and I'll win this, that, and the other. And it's not like that at all. So the adversity you face on the mats, I think, helps you cope with the adversity you face in other aspects of life. And so, yeah, so I'm a geek in the day and a jiu-jitsu nerd at night.
Well, it's perfect that you're on the show because, like, I am a bit of a crazy person. I'm pretty sure, and I've been reading just in the Financial Review a couple of days ago, but it's either our generation or the next generation. Like with aging being now classified as a disease, then that implies that aging is curable. And like for me, I want to do BJJ and I want to live to hundreds of years old. Like I don't know how far I can go, but BJJ and doing it forever is a really important part of my journey. So do you subscribe to those sorts of views as well? Like you into the anti-aging science, and have you been looking into that sort of stuff? And do you see how does longevity and BJJ tie together for you?
I've not really dug into it. I've got a friend of mine who keeps telling me I need to have stem cells injected to my knees because I've got torn meniscus in both knees. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu really makes you face up with your own mortality and your physical limits. I mean, modern athletes are amazing, right? The new techniques that have been developed and the athleticism and strength and whatever, and some of that's injection based. but a lot of it's just natural talent and training techniques and so on. Saw a post by Lockie Giles the other day, and he's reading books on learning, and he's right across all that sort of stuff. So you're really faced with your mortality, and think about, as you get older as a grappler, how you change your game and change your expectations. But I do agree, I think technology's come along such a long way that, at some point soon, I can go and get whether it's a cadaver or whether it's stem cells, I could get my meniscus replaced. I could do this, that, and the other. So hopefully that, and just general things about enhanced nutrition, better nutrition, and just being more conscious about the fact that we need more sleep and we need to take better care of our bodies, means that we can roll for longer. Even without all of that, although I suppose he would claim the Gracie diet, Helio was rolling into a very ripe old age. So I'd be hoping for the same, but not at this stage expecting to be able to do that without changing the way I approach jiu-jitsu, and which I'm doing, I think, as time goes on.
Yeah, awesome.
And you mentioned about your meniscus. Would that be your worst injury? Tell us about any injuries that you've had through your time.
So I've torn my LCL, and I went to a sports doctor 6 weeks later on recommendation. Actually, it was with Lockie Giles at the time, and he said, well, it's halfway torn through. You're a 50% chance of having surgery or not. But you walk pretty straight, so you might be okay. And I was. So I've done that. I popped a shoulder. That went straight back in. You get that feeling of nausea when you've done something really nasty you shouldn't have, the big adrenaline dump. With a mate of mine threw me in a big ass Uchimata and then landed on my shoulder. Numerous broken fingers or sprained fingers and the odd broken toe. But 2 meniscus. So a tear in my medial and lateral meniscus in my right knee. And I think it's my medial as well on my left knee. So, I mean, they're debilitating. It was kind of frustrating in a way. I'm a big knee slice passer on the right-hand side for many years. And then I tore my meniscus and thought, okay, I'll learn to do it on the other side. And it took me 2 years to develop that same pressure and weight and balance and whatnot, and then tore that knee. So it's like, I guess there are a few injuries that you can't train around ultimately. You just have to change your game. I mean, the blind grappler in New Zealand, well, he can't see, but he trains around that. One of the Machados has one finger on his hand. He trains around that. I used to train with a guy who had cerebral palsy, and he had the cross-face of death. So you can always adjust your game. But my knees would probably be the worst aspect of my body.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was just stalking your Facebook, man. You're right. You are super nerdy in a good way. But there's like Dungeons and Dragons posts, Arkham Asylum. Like you are, you're fantastic, man. So what do you actually do for fun outside of jiu-jitsu? Like this looks like Dungeons and Dragons. Are you into that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I played as a kid, and I've still got my first generation books, and was always meaning to get back into it. And so a friend of mine who lives in Sydney, he works with the asylum seeker centre there, in food and support and all the rest of it. And they just started a group about 6 weeks ago using D&D Beyond, which is the online version that handles all the mechanics, etc. So I hadn't played it for 20 odd years. So that's fun. Grew up reading fantasy, Tolkien, all that kind of business. So I do that once a week. When it's warm enough, I get out on the bike, which was the COVID purchase last year. I've got a road bike. So I'm no great shakes as a cyclist, but it's gets me out there. Mooney Ponds Creek, Merry Creek. It's the birds are singing, the sun's shining, that kind of thing, and you're getting some exercise.
I'm the same. I can relate to that. Yeah, absolutely. I'm in Fitzroy North. So
walk my dog. All about dogs. I've been around dogs since I was 3. So Labradors in particular. So I hang out with him, and I'm a big reader. Theology, natural history, some politics, climate change. Obviously, being a meteorologist by profession, it's become a bit of an obsession. So I don't know if this is for fun, but it is what I do. I spend a lot of time in churches and whatnot, trying to get people fired up about, if you pardon the pun, about climate change and being more vocal and thinking about how they vote and the way they live their lives and all these sorts of things. I finished a master's degree in that earlier this year, and I'll probably start a PhD in it next year.
Wow. Oh man, you are a contribution to the planet, man. Thank you. so much. Holy shit.
trying to do my bit, you know. We could all do our bit, right?
Thank
You
you.
may be our most learned guest that we've had on, our most educated guest, that's for sure. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for giving up your time. And
Oh, my
actually,
pleasure.
I want to tell the listeners too that I think you are the most easy to schedule in guest. We pretty much messaged you yesterday, and today here we are because, sometimes we have Anton and I have a bit of a chuckle about sometimes it's a little bit tricky to schedule in. We're all busy people, but thank you so much for making yourself
Oh, my
available so
pleasure.
quickly. It's great. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was honored because I thought I obviously saw this podcast and I thought, oh, I'll never be on that. I don't own an academy and I don't have a cupboard full of medals. Why the hell would you want to talk to me? I mean, I'm just some broken old guy. But we all love jujitsu, so I was
exactly
really
right.
pleased to be invited.
Yeah.
So
No,
here I am.
You're perfect. And the reason why is this podcast's intention is actually to uncover people in the jiu-jitsu community who may not necessarily be uncovered, or if they are exposed already, uncover parts of them that aren't already uncovered. So, man, you're perfect.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I figure there's already a lot of podcasts out there where they're interviewing the big names and the big stars, but yeah, we want to talk to every people, you know, the everyday man. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And I guess getting back to jiu-jitsu, even though we could go down a rabbit hole, I'm sure, with regards to all the other stuff you just talked about. You mentioned about not owning an academy, but you're at Renegade with Jamie Murray, who we have had on before. And tell us about that. That is just like an amazing culture. It has a really good vibe. So as someone who's not the owner, why do you think that is? What's the secret sauce, as Anton calls it, that makes that tick?
I think the club aims to put people first before profit. I mean, I know that's a bit of a cliche, but it's true. I think we teach really good jiu-jitsu. I mean, and Jamie's very credentialed in terms of his comp experience and so on. And he knows how to put it together. And we've raised a lot of quality grapplers. But I think it's putting people first. I mean, I know what he would say. It's love and serve. It's very much fueled by his Christian faith, not about thrusting beliefs down people's throats, but it's about, you know, the center of the Christian message is all about love. Yes. Which I get, right? So it's loving people regardless. You know, you get some interesting people walk into a gym, are difficult to love, difficult to get along with, but love's about meeting people where they're at and helping them change their lives and transform and so on. And if you have as I said earlier, I've done a bunch of martial arts over the years. And if you have a solid community where you look forward to seeing the people, and it's a safe environment. Of course, by safe, I don't mean that you're free from harm, as my knees can attest, black eyes or whatnot, but and not that people aren't rolling hard, because that's the nature of the sport, but it's a supportive community, and you understand that, you know, raising all ships, everyone's wanting to improve and help each other improve. And if you can foster that kind of culture, then I think the rest follows, as important as good jiu-jitsu is. So it's just that focus of people recognizing people come in with a whole different bunch of needs or desires. You'll get I want to be a fighter, and that's fine. And you know, we all love the MMA world, the sport, etc., or those who want to become world champions. But some people want to lose weight. Some women have been physically abused, and so there's so much going on in the background for them. Some people come in with insecurities. They come in with substance abuse issues. This is, you know, or people just want to blow off steam after a hard day at work. So trying to accommodate those people from that point of view and get alongside them, treat them as human beings and not just clients. But then at the same time doing that and saying, well, teach them the basics, but encourage them to explore the different parts of jiu-jitsu as well and build their own game. So I think that's what works. Just trying to be decent people. And jiu-jitsu is full of them, which is great. You know, I've met some wonderful people on the mats over the years.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, they say that it definitely kind of weeds out the assholes, doesn't it? That's the way it's meant to go. You can't really keep your ego too much. I don't know that it does, though.
I don't know that it does, though. I mean, I know this is the Joe Rogan, it's the douchebag filter.
Yeah.
But I think it can go one or two ways. I mean, if you look at Dylan Dennis, can I say? I mean, it is a fellow who's got a fairly high public profile, and not always for the best of reasons. He's an incredibly talented grappler, but it's driven in one particular way. I think if you've already got a very strong ego, it can magnify that. And I've seen a few of that, but by and large, it's largely in the minority. But yeah, the adversity that you face, the need to cooperate and work with others does breed humility. I think for me, never having been very good at anything, it's been the need to develop true humility rather than false humility. Always putting oneself down, but actually, acknowledging that you have some skills, but there's always someone better. But yeah, I don't know that's entirely true that it's an arsehole or a douchebag filter. It largely is, but it can push people the other way.
Maybe it's only a douchebag filter if there's people better than the douchebag, because then they can.
Well, that's possible.
If you're a douchebag and really good at jiu-jitsu, it's a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
You've got a podcast called Podbean. What's all that about?
Oh, okay. So that Podbean's the host. It's called The Natural Philosopher. And again, as kind of a Christian with a science background, which sometimes, I get what the heck? How do those two things go together?
That's a bit of a, but probably a really useful crossover for spreading the message of both, actually.
Absolutely. And my main goal is to, and obviously I'm bound by, I work for the public service. So there's boundaries about what I can say and how I can say it, but exploring the space of looking at environmental and ecological issues and so on, and saying, as a Christian believer, this is what motivates me towards acting in this space, but also as a scientist, this is my understanding of this space. So it's just, every person and their dog has a podcast these days, and the unfortunate timing was
dog actually does have a podcast, believe it or not.
And I think it's brilliant. Look, to let's go back a step, just to assure you I'm not blowing smoke up your backside at this point. My first job was what was called an educational technologist, post my uni degree, and that was exploring the use of technology in education. And one of the things they talked a lot about is constructivism, where you build your own understanding of the world rather than passively take information. And it was at the start of the World Wide Web. As I remember, I said before, back in the day, the internet was just text, and things like blogs were coming online. This is pre-podcast, and people being able to author their own web page and all this sort of thing. So people went from passive receivers of stuff on the internet to generating their own content. And if done well, that generates a lot of understanding, not just for yourself, but for others. So I'm very, very pro podcast. It's just that I mistimed mine. I launched it in the middle of a pandemic when every other person was doing it. So there's a glut on the market. But what it does mean is that there's such a plethora of great stuff out there to get you think about whatever it is you're into, or extend yourself into different areas. So yeah, I think podcasts are brilliant. I wouldn't be doing one of my own if I didn't, or appearing on them, because I get the occasional invitation like this. So it's like, yeah, and I like talking to people. So
likely information that you can trust, isn't it? Because it doesn't necessarily have an agenda driven by money. Like ours, we don't make a cent. We just do it because we love people.
Absolutely. But you also need a good filter, I think. So, not everyone, as I say, there's a variety of different podcasts, and the more specialized or more particular information, if there was a podcast about health and they were, I don't mean to diss naturopaths, but if they were kind of anti-vax and whatever else, well, then you need to put your filter on about that. Yeah. Or not everything that you hear, everything you read is reliable or true.
Probably something that you need to be wary of. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the whole podcast phenomena is a really good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this kind of just evolved. Anton and I used to just have a phone call every week, and then he said, why don't we record these phone calls? And I thought, who on earth wants to listen to these conversations? And lo and behold, then he said, let's get another person on and talk with them as well. And here we are. So I think this is a number 88 or 90 or something we're up to now. So yeah, we've been doing it a while. Every week.
That's awesome.
I'm a bit OCD like that. I force Anton. I'm like, next week, we need another one out. So that's the way, that's the way we do it. And getting back to jiu-jitsu, even though I feel like, God, we could talk as much about your life outside of jiu-jitsu really, but it is a jiu-jitsu podcast. You mentioned about you didn't feel that, you don't have a cupboard full of medals or whatever, but I know you from a lot of competitions. You compete a lot. Yeah, you compete a lot of local comps, national comps, and so I don't know why you sort of feel like that.
Well, the drive is strong to compete. I think, and again, it's the wonderful thing about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is you can really, really test yourself. in a really realistic fashion. And, you know, and like striking arts, the consequences are typically minimal. Just tap in time before something snaps or you go to sleep. So certainly I competed a lot. I remember my very first comp as a white belt. In fact, my very first 2 comps as a white belt, I was hyperventilating. It was all adrenaline dump and I didn't have a lot of cardio. And in fact, I remember refereeing my very first comp saying, "You okay?" And I said, "Yes," struggling to breathe. And did have a lot of success initially and then took some time off and then went back into it later, higher, towards the end of blue belt and whatnot. So always wanting to test, but not a lot of success, certainly not a lot of recent success, but it's also, I mean, these days it's about being part of a crew. We went to the Asian Open 2 years ago and I loved it. It was just the best time. All the training, the hill sprints we did, the pushing each other on, you know, the journey is as important as the destination. And then hanging out with friends and making new friends in Tokyo was just amazing. And I actually had a trip with my son planned to Tokyo at the start of last year, which like most things got cancelled. So I'm looking forward to doing that again. But I like to compete. Just mixed success, that's all.
Well, I can relate. Like I hyperventilated so hard and was so nervous my first match. And Tiago was watching me and coaching me, and I was so nervous. I tapped the guy in the face to tap out. Like I was tapping in the face. And Tiago gave me so much shit about that. But anyway, that aside,
Okay.
how did you get? Like I think I'm pretty much through most of my comp nerves now. But what was your strategy for dealing with comp nerves to get that in the past?
Yeah, good question. Your body will do what your body will do. Like I've got a mate who was a major in the army and we used to do jiu-jitsu together. And if his heart rate got up a certain beats per minute, he vomited on the mat, didn't matter, whatever. Yeah. So your body's going to do what your body's going to do. Yeah. I know that, you know, you go to loo a dozen times, you get really sweaty, this, that, and the other. You have to change your mindset. And the mindset is my body's getting ready for combat. My body's getting ready for stress. I'm anticipating this. I'm going to call this excitement. I'm not going to call it nerves. I want to do this. I want to win. I'm looking forward to the experience. Just change the way you approach it.
I love that's right there. Yep.
I mean, obviously I get better prepared cardio wise. You drill a bunch of stuff, you know what you're going to do, you try, you know what your A game is going to be, kind of thing. But sometimes I get tunnel vision like I did in Tokyo, and I was like kicking myself afterwards thinking, no, you should have actually lapel dragged at that point. And that's always going to be the case, right? But it's a change in the mindset and just down to controlling my breathing and the way I walk on the mat and just kind of, I don't know, but been doing it nearly 20 years now. And so it's just, here's another comp, going to get excited, going to try this, going to squash this person if I can, but and probably need to put more out there and be willing to exhaust myself. But yeah, just this is a change of mindset. I'm excited. This is going to be good. Let's go. What's the worst that's going to happen to me?
I love it. Thank you for saying it.
For someone that's been doing jiu-jitsu for so long, like what would you say to people that are listening who are still early on in their journey, like, you know, second year, third year, fourth year, even just beginning? Like, what would, if you could go back in time, would you do anything differently? Like, what would you tell people about what to expect?
What would I do? I know I'd cross train a lot more. I'd do more lifting and more cardio. I would look. I think it's hard, and I don't know that there are shortcuts to this, but the key thing that's changed for me over the past couple of years, and actually going back after the first big lockdown, was kind of if you're going to be a competitor, but you're not competing all the time. As a black belt and a higher rank, it was always drilled in me from someone I won't name, but they got the sense that you didn't tap to a lower belt. You were, every time you rolled, you were always defending the belt. Now I represent the belt. And representing the belt doesn't mean that I'm a failure if I tap to, like, I'm a 52, right? If I get a 20-year-old 100-kilogram competitive blue belt, I'm going to tap at some point. But rather than defending the belt, I represent the belt, which is what's the techniques that's expected of me? How do I carry myself as a person? By which I mean, I used to get angry on the mat a lot, but I can count the times on one hand where that was at someone else.
Mm.
It was always at me.
Mm.
Oh, you didn't do good enough. You should have been able to do this. You should have been able to do that. Blah 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 blah. Just enjoy the journey. Learn as much as you can. Listen to the instructor, which I always did. And then start and find something early on that's you, which is something I didn't do. So I was 6 years on purple belt. And it wasn't until the last 2 years where I started, well, what's my game? And for a time it was single leg X. So it was just drill that, and had some comp success with it. I won one match, swept a guy multiple times, kept him on his back, and then tried to do it to, is it Brenton? And then ended up getting passed and submitted. Yeah, I do remember that bout vividly. The some bouts are really, I mean, he's a gun grappler, right? But just remember that experience, because then I got my brown, and then it was 18 months later, it was black. But yeah, it's enjoy the journey. Don't obsess about winning all the time. That's not how you learn. And when you got the basics under your belt, find what your game is. And I think people these days do it far more effectively than I did. It's like, I like this, I'm going to focus on top game, I'm going to focus on this guard, whatever. So you want to be broad, but you also want some depth in a certain area.
And I think that is the most profound thing I've heard in a long time. That I think, did you say represent the belt, not defend the belt? Is that what you said?
Correct. Yep. That's what I said.
Like the way I like to deal with my honor or my word, my integrity, is like, honor my word. Don't necessarily always keep my word. Like, I don't have to show up on time every time, but I have to honor my word. I have to communicate if I'm not going to show up on time. It's like this similar kind of concept of actually just keeping the honor intact of the whole thing the whole way through. And I'm very moved by what you just said, actually, because it's how I want to be in from here on. You've just actually changed my view of jiu-jitsu and belts. And also, as someone who's been on purple belt for 4 years, I'm not far behind you. And now you've given me some nuggets for how I'm going to get out of this purple belt.
Surely we can't count the last 2 years, Anton.
No.
Everyone's got to take those off their tally.
Absolutely.
My thoughts.
I mean, I can no longer say I've been doing jiu-jitsu for almost 20 years. I started almost 20 years ago, but it's in fact, like Jamie and I do our second degrees, but if you haven't been on the mat, you don't deserve it, right? So
what would you like to, is the honor versus defend the note that you would like to finish on, or is there something else you'd like to share with our listeners before we tap out today?
I think that's a pretty good place to stop, don't you? Otherwise, I'll just waffle on about something else.
I'm so
waffle away. That's what we're here for.
I'm sure I get to choose the title of this one, and it's going to be "Honor the Belt, Don't Defend the Belt." That is the title of this podcast, because that's the piece.
Very nice.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Pleasure.
that was beautiful. Thank you, Mick. I don't know why you thought you wouldn't be a worthy guest. You are an absolutely worthy guest. So we will have this out probably the week after next. And if you could share it with your followers, that would be great. And we can potentially grow our audience a little bit more. And look forward to seeing you. Now we can say it. We're in Melbourne, but we can see you in person on the mats.
Yeah.
Hopefully very soon.
Soon. Hopefully very soon.
Awesome.
Very soon.
Yeah,
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Yes.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.